There is a long history associated with the house at 28456 Alden Drive. Our police department is very familiar with those involved in what happens. I urge our residents to remain vigilant. Keep your eyes and ears open. If you see any type of suspicious activity, report it to our police department immediately. If you see something, say something. It's important today to focus on the heroism of our officers in terms of this incident. They did a magnificent job, and I congratulate them and commend them for their bravery and their willingness to put their lives on the line every day. I'd like to now turn our press conference over to our Chief of Police, Bob Wagner.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for coming. Over the last couple days, 48 hours, we've been inundated with media requests over the incident that happened on Alden Drive. It's difficult for us to fulfill those as quickly as I know all you want. We try to give regular press updates as we get new information. But we are prepared today to grab everybody's email address, and we'll immediately send out the dash cam, or not dash cam, but body cam video, 911 audio, and radio traffic regarding this incident. So first off, I want to note that there's a couple different investigations going on here. We have Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation investigating the officer-involved shooting. They're a completely independent law enforcement agency. I've worked with them multiple times in the past and have the utmost confidence that they have the resources involved to come to a conclusion on this eventually. We are not going to make a lot of comments on the officer-involved shooting. It's not my investigation. It is Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation. But at 2 in the morning, I received a call on Saturday night that one of my officers was shot. It's probably one of the worst calls a chief of police could get. I immediately responded to the hospital. Officer was in good spirits. He was treated and released, thankfully. I met with him again today with his family. He's still in good spirits and recovering at home, thankfully. He was saved by his bulletproof vest. He took one round directly over the heart and then another one in the arm. North Olmsted is tasked with the other portion of the investigation, and that would be the arson and subsequent homicide of a person that we found inside the house when the flames were put out. Investigation took place. We found a body that we believe was shot, and then the house was set on fire. So we're tasked with that side of the investigation, while the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation is tasked with the officer-involved portion. There's a lot of people that are in a lot of moving parts with investigations like this. We had responding officers from Westlake, Bay Village, Fairview Park, Rocky River. The Westlake officers actually transported my officer to the hospital. They did a great job. I can't speak highly enough of Westlake Police Department. They have a representative here today. We work in conjunction with them on a daily basis. We train with them, and I think the training came through this weekend. So right now I'm going to turn this over to Detective Sergeant Matt Beck. He's the one in charge of our detective bureau. He's going to be handling the arson homicide portion of this. But I do want to reiterate, I think you guys all now have the names of the people involved. If you haven't gotten I think the names are out there, but if we haven't gotten the pictures, we're going to be releasing that this afternoon as well. But I'll reiterate what the mayor said. We've been very, very familiar with this residence on Alden Drive for as long as I've been here, and that's over 25 years. Mr. Christopher Teresi has a long criminal history of theft, drugs, robbery, extensive. And then the other portion, the person that is now deceased that went to Fairview Hospital that we believe shot at my officers, he doesn't have a long history with the North Olmsted Police Department, but since probably June, we've dealt with him on a few occasions. So I know that one of the other requests that we're going to be fulfilling over the next few days is all the call history.
With that, if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to ask, or what I can, answer what I can.
Just in sequential order, if you could start with the interaction between the individual that approached the woman. Can you describe what he said to her and then what she did?
So he was bleeding profusely from both eyebrows, and he stated to her that somebody was trying to kill his uncle, and that they needed to send police to that address there in Alden.
Can you describe the interaction between the officers and the individual who was standing in the doorway on Alden when they arrived?
He was fleeing from the residence, so at that point in time, there was no interaction between the
Well,
officers.
that's what I mean. What happened between what does he do? What do they do?
So he was the one who took off running through the backyard, so our officer saw him, gave chase, gave multiple verbal commands to stop, identified himself as the police, and after about 5 or 6 of those notifications is when he finally got tripped up in the bushes, and the shooting subsequently happened from there.
Can you talk about the gunfire that the officer took and the role that his bulletproof vest played in saving his life?
He was shot twice. Don't know how exactly, if it was the same round or 2 different rounds, but he took one through his left arm. Luckily, nothing of any importance was struck, and then took one to the left side of his chest, right over his heart. The bulletproof vest did his job. It didn't penetrate his body, and subsequently saved his life, yes.
Can you talk about the relationship between Mr. Teresi, his nephew, and Mr. Thomas Nock, and I guess the police interaction with them?
So Mr. Teresi would be the uncle of the other involved, and then the shooter that is no longer with us is a good friend of the other involved.
So can you talk about the background of that home over the past, say, 25 years and police interaction with the folks that live there?
All I can say really is that Mr. Teresi has had an extensive history with our department for various incidences, and dating back for every bit of 30 years.
So
Are you able to say how the fire was
Could I ask a
started?
question?
Can I let her ask when Mr.
I just
Shea,
want to
thank you.
clarify, so is Teresa, the man with the bloody eyebrows, Teresi, that's his uncle?
That's his nephew.
That's his nephew?
Yes,
And so who is the man that was found on Lorraine Road?
that is the victim and a witness in this, and at this time we have not released his name.
So it's not the man with the bloody eyebrows?
That is the man with the bloody
That
eyebrows.
is? Okay.
Yes, he was able to run out of the house prior to his uncle being shot and this fire being started. He ran out to many houses, rang on doorbells, knocked on doors, trying to get somebody. Because prior to all that, his cell phone was taken from him, so he did not have any ways of communicating to 911, so he was trying to find anybody that would call 911 for him.
So Mr. Nock broke into the house? Did he break in?
That is unclear at this time.
Are you able to say how the fire was started and how it progressed so quickly?
Our state fire marshal, through their initial investigation, determined that there was some sort of accelerant used, and that is all we know at this time as far as the arson.
Was that used, as you might confirm, to cover up the shooting, or what?
That, again, that's unknown, but we would believe that that would be the reason for the said fire set, is to try and cover up the homicide.
Can you
What's
say-
the motive for Mr. Nock's actions?
We have no idea at this point. Nothing we have found leads us to any conclusion as to why he did what he did.
How many shots were fired by the officers and by Nock?
That I don't know. The Ohio BCI will have that answer at the conclusion of their investigation.
What kind of gun was Nock armed with?
I believe it was a 9mm handgun.
Are you convinced that the nephew is an innocent party in this? It's my understanding that Nock and the nephew have been friends since they were children and that they've always spent time together.
Our investigations will continue into his involvement, but at this point in time, we have no reason to believe that he was involved in his uncle's murder or the arson and fire in that home.
Was Mr. Teresi being asked to leave or move out of the house?
From what I understand, that he was served a eviction notice by his stepmother
In that particular house?
from that house, yes.
Who was served the eviction notice?
Mr. Teresi as well as his nephew.
Any indication if this was a robbery of some sort?
Nothing leads to that point as of yet. The initial, I guess, portion of this is still under investigation.
Matt, could you talk about the good fortune of the officer and the fact that the equipment works in this case?
Yeah, that we carry level 3A body armor, which is designed to absorb the impact from handgun rounds as well as knife stabbings, and luckily that's all our officer was shot with was a handgun, so the bulletproof vest did work, and no doubt about it, he's living and breathing today because of that.
Mayor, can you say what the schedule for demolition is? It's obviously that the house is burned out. Do you have to wait for the conclusion of the state and North Olmsted investigations, or is it going to be torn down anytime soon?
It should be torn down soon. We did issue an emergency demolition order this past weekend.
I just want to ask, are police looking for any other suspects for this incident? And then when was the last time, or has an officer in North Olmsted been shot? And then when was the last homicide in North Olmsted?
There are no other suspects that we are looking at this time. The officer that was shot was the first officer shot in the line of duty in North Olmsted. The last homicide that we had here in North Olmsted was, oh yes, the murder-suicide at our Giant Eagle.
Was this the first time the officer fired his weapon?
Yes, on duty, correct.
Matt, are you identifying the officer?
Not at this time.
But is he at home recovering?
He is, yes.
It's my understanding the ATF was on scene at one point. What was their role?
They were alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, so we had firearms involved. So they were assisting with that part of the investigation.
Okay, nothing like a search of the house or anything like that, or?
We were searching the house for evidence. They assisted in that, yes.
Is there anything you'd like to say to the neighbors around the residence?
We received multiple phone calls. Definitely they were concerned about their neighbor's house being up in flames. But they all willingly evacuated their residences as they were ordered to do for their safety. And we were grateful for that. It made our job a lot easier. And once the fire was out and we allowed them to return home, they all cooperated very well, so we appreciate that.
Matt, for you and the mayor.
Say, sir, to the neighbors, this gentleman, the nephew, as I believe you said, someone knocked on several doors to try and get some help. I know people are a little scared to open doors, but about being a good neighbor, maybe calling somebody sooner, anything that might have facilitated or your response.
Our calls, obviously, at 2 o'clock in the morning, you can imagine that being awoken by somebody bleeding, screaming into your camera ring doorbell, that you may be a little hesitant to answer the door. So they did the right thing and they contacted our dispatch. But by the time that our calls got made out and officers can put 2 and 2 together, he had already made his way down the road and found that lady that was on the side of the road. So,
For Matt and the mayor, would it be accurate to say that Mr. Teresi was a nightmare of a neighbor for the people on Alden Drive?
Mr. Teresi had his problems. Again, I'm not going to go into too many details about that, but you know, to say that he was a menace to that street, I'll leave it up for those people to say. I don't live on Alden, so I don't want to comment on that.
Can you describe the nature of the calls? That previous calls?
Domestics, theft investigations sometimes led us there. Warrant arrests for Mr. Teresi I've been involved with in my career.
Thank you.
So if everybody wants to get with our IT professional, Joe, he's taking a list. He's over here in the back. He'll take a list of email addresses, or if you want to give him cards, and we will send out all the information as soon as we get back over to the station. We got it prepped up and ready to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.